Hello, I'm Philip Brunelle, Artistic Director and founder of Vocal Essence and organist choirmaster at Plymouth Congregational Church. So each day I've selected a different composer to talk about, a composer who's had a role to play at Plymouth Church or Vocal Essence or both. Today it's the French composer Charles Gounod, G-O-U-N-O-D, born in 1818, died in 1893. You probably know him best, probably because of the operas that he composed. There were 12 of them. Romeo and Juliet, Faust were the two most famous. But probably also you know him because in 1853, he took this melody of Bach. The one from his Well-Tempered Clavier, the very first prelude. And what he did was superimpose a melody on top of it. Not much later, a friend of his said, well, that melody is beautiful and the text is okay, but why don't you use Ave Maria? Oh, so he did. And so when you put Ave Maria on top of it, it starts with the Bach. And then you add. Which became hugely popular and still is. You often hear it sung at weddings, funerals, just in general, a very much of a piece from that period in the 1850s. He was also a church musician. He not only he studied, of course, in Paris at the Conservatoire. He was a friend of Mendelssohn and of Berlioz. In 1839, he won the most prestigious European prize, the Prix de Rome, and became familiar with Pauline Viardot, a very fascinating woman, composer, singer. And in 1843, he moved to Paris. And I just can't imagine, he was in a very small church, the church Missions Étrangères, and he had a choir of 2 basses, 1 tenor, and a boy soprano. What do you do? Well, he stayed there, and he said it was great training for him to have just that small group and every Sunday figure out what they could sing. He then, of course, became famous because of the operas that he wrote. As I mentioned, Faust, but also I remember when I took music opera history at the University of Minnesota from Dominic Argento. He himself, being an opera composer, was very, very particular about other composers, and he didn't think a lot about Gounod's operas. He felt they were very kind of, overly sugary, somewhat maudlin. And I still remember him in class one day saying, how can you get serious about a composer who would write an opera entitled The Bleeding Nun? True. Well, in that time of life, people were writing on all kinds of topics. And of course, he became known not only for having written these operas, but he wrote a piece called The Redemption, which was a kind of big story of the life of Christ and went on from there. And these pieces were huge. This is a big symphonic piece with chorus. And near the end, this is a piece that used to be sung in churches all across the USA. It came with this chorus saying, "Unfold ye portals everlasting." So it was sung often like on Palm Sunday. So you get the orchestra going. And then the chorus sings "Unfold," and then the orchestra plays. So when you put it together, on with that grand big style that was very much popular in the 1880s. I first, when I came to Plymouth Church, knew about Gounod because he had a piece setting words of Alfred Lord Tennyson, Ring Out Wild Bells, that famous poem. And at Plymouth Church, in those days prior to me, every first Sunday in January, this anthem by Gounod, Ring Out Wild Bells, would be sung. And so you had this idea. So first you hear the bells, and then the basses. That melody develops, and then finally, when you get to the very end of it, of course, it needs to become from minor to major so that you finally get. But pretty much just back and forth with those chords. Now, the piece of music that I think is one of the most beautiful pieces he wrote comes from a solemn mass that he wrote, the Messe Solennelle. And though that mass isn't heard much anymore, if ever, this beautiful Sanctus still is. And it starts out with a tenor solo on the word Sanctus, holy, and then gradually the choir comes in, and it ends as quietly as it began. Music of Gounod, this is the Sanctus from his solemn mass. And then the tenor. Then the choir comes in. And it repeats. Then the middle section, we start changing key. We keep modulating and modulating until finally we come back to F major where we started. And it gets bigger and bigger. Finally, the sopranos go up to high A. And then after this grand hosanna, suddenly it's just the orchestra, very quietly with a solo violin. Have a wonderful day.